There's this fear of offense of anyone who's brown or...
The Reverend Mark Leach is the co-founder of Never Again Is Now. He's a dynamic leader, building a movement and making anti-Semitism unthinkable. Mark has a Jewish background, is a Christian believer, and a very passionate Australian.
We have to stand with the Jewish community. I stood there, I waved an Israeli flag.
Mark left his parish to become a radical conservative activist. He was chased off church steps by anti-Israeli protesters, so began a journey to establish a grassroots movement educating and mobilizing all Australians to stand against the most ancient of racial hatreds.
And it became so clear to me that we needed to mobilize Middle Australia to not buy the lie that this was all about the poor oppressed Palestinians and the evil, wicked Israelis.
And now you are a radical activist. What's happened?
So about September last year, I jumped out of 30 years of leading churches.
Mark, great to see you. Most of the time that I've known you, you were the Reverend Mark Leach of Anglican fame, and now you are a radical activist. What's happened?
Yeah, well, Mark, thank you for having me on, and I hope your viewers and listeners get some value out of this. Well, what's happened is October the 7th, 2023, we saw the largest single massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust. Southern Israel invaded by jihadists intent on murdering, massacring, raping as many Jews as they could, taking them hostage. And I watched that. I've spent 30 years as an Anglican minister. My mum's Jewish. My father was Catholic. Grew up in a crazy family in Africa. Always aware of, my mum's family fled the Holocaust, always aware of anti-Semitism, of this kind of hatred for Jewish people that just lies beneath the surface and bubbles up. And so I watched all of that. I watched this bubble up on October the 7th and this massacre happen. And I thought that we needed to address it in Australia. We couldn't just let this pass by. And on October the 9th, there was this rally, infamous rally that ended up at the Opera House,
Yes.
but it started in Town Hall. My daughter called me and said, Dad, she was at Sydney University, said, Dad, they're planning a rally. The pro-Palestinians are planning a rally against Israel in Town Hall Square, so we've got to do something about it. So I thought we did. I phoned the police and I said to them, I'm an Anglican minister. I'm planning to come down and protest this because it's illegal. And the police said, Mr. Leach, we're advising the Jewish community to stay out of the city centre. And if you come down and try and do anything, we can't guarantee your safety and we will arrest you to prevent a breach of the peace. And I thought to myself, well, bugger that. Said, I'm an Australian, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor, and this is just virulent hate. Israel had not yet gone into Gaza in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
The blood hadn't dried on the steppes of southern Israel. They were still chasing terrorists around, and these guys were going to occupy the center of Sydney and call for the genocide, the ethnic cleansing of Israel, of all Jewish people from the river to the sea, full of hate. We all know how that rally ended. But as it was getting going, I stood on the steps of the Anglican Cathedral, 1,000 people in front of me. I took out an Israeli flag and I stood for Australia, for the decency of our country, saying we will not let hate control our city. We have to stand with the Jewish community. We cannot let this kind of racism triumph. I stood there, I waved an Israeli flag, I got hounded out of the square. A bunch of keffiyeh-wrapped thugs chased me around the streets of Sydney. I ended up hiding behind a police van. They dispersed the crowd, and that was my stand for decency.
Yes.
And for Western civilization. And then after that, it became so clear to me that we needed to mobilize Middle Australia, everyday Aussies, to understand what was happening, to not buy the lie that this was all about the poor oppressed Palestinians and the evil, wicked Israelis, but actually this hatred was being introduced into Australian society, where we had no impact on how the IDF behaved in Gaza, anything like that. This was just pure Jewish hatred. And so I decided that I should do something about it. I felt compelled to. A group of us started running rallies, led by Christians and everyday Aussies, to stand against this. We ran these in every capital city around the country. And what I discovered was wherever I went to talk to everyday Aussies and tell the story of what was really happening, point out what the challenges were that we faced, people wanted to get involved. So I looked around and I discovered that I had inadvertently started a national movement.
So radical activist.
Yeah, it just happened. And from the top down, from former prime ministers, CEOs, major captains of industry through to your everyday average mum and dad and uni student, people realized we have to stand against this hate. We have to stand for Western civilization. So about September last year, I jumped out of 30 years of leading churches, and I'm now the CEO of this charity we formed, Never Again Is Now, that is spearheading this fight for Western civilization as the way to protect the Jewish community here in Australia.
Yeah. And why now, Mark? Like, what do you think? October 7 obviously changed the world, but this thing hasn't happened in isolation. There's been a lot of history. Why do you think Australia has been so sort of blind to what I would see as truth, the historical truth and situational truth?
Well, look, that's a great question, and in the 2 hours I have to answer that question, let me start. I'll try and do it briefly. I think, firstly, Australia is fundamentally, up until this point, a Christian country, in the sense that the English historian Tom Holland calls it Christian, that the very way we see the world is so shaped by Christianity. And one of the things that Christianity has taught us and that we value and we just think is normal is that we think the best of people and that we value people, we value the poor and the marginalized and the oppressed, and we stand with them, right? So those are two thoughts. What has then happened over the last 50 years? Well, really since the mid-1970s, the Muslim Brotherhood have had a articulated, well-funded strategy to infiltrate Western civilization, Western countries like Australia and the United States and England, to infiltrate and then use the weaknesses and the divisions of those countries against themselves to divide the country and slowly and ineluctably extend Islamic influence in those countries. At the same time that that's been happening, these countries have been primed for this by the embrace of the radical left, sort of post-colonial neo-Marxist thinking, which in its simplest form divides the world neatly into categories to group identity. In Marx, it was capital versus labor, and history moved towards its utopian climax by a revolution of capital against labor, labor against capital. But after the Second World War in the post-colonial world, what happened was those categories of capital and labor, well, clearly didn't actually work, because actually poor workers just wanted to get rich and accumulate capital, and that was very successful. So that broke down. So what happened was the left, the radical left, then inserted other simplistic identities into those categories, the most powerful of which was the colonial oppressor versus the oppressed. A guy called Frantz Fanon wrote a book called Wretched of the Earth. He was an Algerian psychotherapist writing in Paris out of the Algerian War. And Fanon's work became very influential, particularly because it was taken up with the radical Islamists. And Fanon said, history will only happen as the oppressed, the colonial oppressed, violently resist the oppressor.
That's right.
And the only way history is going to move towards a good life and a good place for all is through violent resistance. And that identity politics that was then embedded in the worldview or the narrative of our Western civilizations. They had what is called the Long March. Antonio Gramsci was an Italian theorist. He said, how is socialism going to capture the world? Well, we've got to have a plan for a long march to capture all the institutions. And they've been remarkably successful at that.
They've done a huge job on it.
Huge job.
Yeah.
Our education institutions, our universities, corporates, you name it. Identity politics. So whether it's whether it's oppressor or oppressed, it's now the environment versus the environment being oppressed by all you wicked capitalists, extraction industries, and rich people, or it's gender ideology dividing us, and DEI, which is the response, this violent overthrow of the patriarchy by the non-binaries, whatever it might be. So we're primed to think, and then what's happened, the Islamist insurgents have got into an unholy alliance with this radical left view and have now said to all of us, really, you are all white colonial oppressors, and Israel is the epitome, the perfect manifestation in space and time of white colonial oppression, and the Palestinians are these plucky, oppressed. And if you want to be a good person, if you want to be deeply Christian, if you want to be on the right side of history, you must side with the oppressed.
Yeah.
And so our culture in Australia and in the Western world is massively under threat by this, because this division of people into identities, turning people against each other, divides us.
Yes.
And gives space for racial hatred, the likes of which we have not seen in Australia in generations. Yeah. The hatred directed towards Jewish people on our streets, in our hospitals. Yes. It's everywhere, and it's legitimated by this binary way of thinking.
And there's a reluctance to even talk about that because of a fear of being seen as part of the oppressing forces.
Yeah, of course, because you're a stale, male, pale, white guy. You're a male patriarchal oppressor, or if in my case, I'm a Christian pastor. Christianity is the religion of the oppressor. And I'm white, and I'm Jewish. I'm like I get the trifecta of oppression, right?
You and me both.
So you go, but it's just not right. That's actually not the way the world works.
Yeah.
Life is far more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And Christianity and our civilization is built on the fundamental understanding that we're individuals first. We're not to be defined by the color of our skin, by our immutable characteristics. What matters is character, is competence, is the kind of people we are.
The sanctity of the individual.
And the sanctity of individual life, yeah.
I think people mistake that as universal values, and it's just not. It's a Western civilization, Judeo-Christian
it is.
Values.
Which emerge from the better story of Christianity, Judaism. You don't get it in other cultures. Exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, which is an uncomfortable truth, I think. But there's a real paradox in this sort of intellectual juxtaposition where you've got Gays for Gaza, I think is the kind of the pinnacle, where you've got two groups that were completely diametrically opposed. We know what the Islamic view on homosexuality is, and people get thrown off buildings and just horrendous things. And yet you've got left-wing ideology, woke, wrapped up in the same.
Yeah,
it's an unholy alliance. You described it. You've got to do some mental gymnastics just to even think about those two groups coexisting.
Well, I've thought a lot about this. I think it's actually, at one level, it's incredibly noble that a gay person, an LGBT person here, might want to stand for oppressed Palestinians.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But what's going on, you see, is when your identity as an LGBT person in Australia, you've now fought against the patriarchy and the gender binary. This defines you. But there's a more important way of understanding yourself, which is you're actually fundamentally a white oppressor, part of this whole colonial system, and the even more vulnerable victims than you are the poor Palestinians in Gaza. So if you want to be a good person, it's not just enough to overthrow the patriarchy in Australia. You have to stand with the Palestinians and the Islamists and the jihadists to overthrow these utterly wicked Jews. And only if you do that will you be a good person, even if it fundamentally contradicts your own identity and even costs your life. It's what Gad Saad, the Lebanese Jewish Canadian psychologist, calls suicidal empathy.
Yes.
I'm drawn. I have to, and I understand. I want to be a good person. I want to be on the right side of history. I can't side with the oppressor, even if at the cost of my own life or my own identity. So I applaud at one level that empathy, but I also go, it's intellectual and cultural suicide.
Totally. 100% agree with that. and because there has been, I think one of the things that's really concerned me and has disturbed me is the blatant rewriting of history. Israelis are the indigenous people of the land. You know, the Jesus that you and I both serve was Jewish. The New Testament's a Jewish book written by Jewish people. Like Christianity is grafted into the Judeo religion and teachings.
Yep.
And yet there's been this massive rewriting of history. All that happened 600 years before Islam was invented. And yet it's presented as genocidal, very inefficient if you want to be genocidal.
Extremely inefficient.
Colonial,
Yep.
not they're the indigenous people of the world, and European, most of them aren't. So it's quite bizarre. How do you... And the media seems to have, in general, sided with that, with the woke narrative.
Yep.
How's that possible that people can just ignore so much fact?
Well, because everything is subsumed in the cause of overthrowing the oppressor. Truth itself is only valid to the extent that it's useful for overthrowing the oppressor. That's the whole framing of it. Like, there's no such thing as objective truth. Journalists, only the validity of the activity of journalism is given to it by the fact that it's going to be part of overthrowing the violent oppressor. So when you see the whole world like that, it's never enough just to tell the truth. You have to be advancing the cause of utopia, of history towards utopia. So truth, history is to be retold in the interests of advancing this cause. And so actually reporting what happened doesn't matter. What matters is moving people in the direction you want them to go. And it's terrifying because...
It is. It's not alignment to an ideology.
Yeah. Well, there's no... If we live in a post-truth world, we're in deep, deep trouble.
Yes.
Because then all you're left with, as Foucault said, the postmodern philosopher, all you're left with is power. Everything is just about power. And we want to say, as people of faith, you and I, we'd say, no, truth matters. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. The other way of thinking about it is reality is what you run into when you're wrong. Okay. So I think this whole narrative, this simplistic framing of identity politics, oppressor, oppressed, isn't working. Look at Gaza. I'd say to the Islamists, how's it working for you?
Yeah.
I'd look at the radical left, the DEI exponents, the identity politics exponents, the Democratic Party in the United States, and I'd say, hey guys, how's it working for you? Well, it doesn't work. DEI bankrupts companies. It's diminishing to the integrity of everyone involved. The narrative around Israel and the retelling of history doesn't fit with how the world really works. And I think just give it time and truth will out, to quote Shakespeare.
Yes. Let's hope so.
No, I think it will, because I think so. If your listeners are probably running businesses, right?
Yeah.
In the end, the cold hard reality is you have to align your business with the way the world really is.
Totally.
Otherwise, you go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Our culture is going bankrupt because the way we frame ourselves and organize ourselves is out of step with the way the world really is. And the way the world really is it does not neatly divide into oppressed categories.
Yeah.
Things are way more complicated than that. The Middle East does not resolve into simple categories like that. It's so much more complicated. Gaza, the propaganda we've adopted doesn't work like that. We will see. Enoch Powell was a famous a British MP, a brilliant man. I mean, back in the 70s, Enoch Powell had a famous speech called Rivers of Blood. And he saw in the 70s that the kind of mass immigration that England was seeing and Europe was seeing, unless it was addressed, would result in rivers of blood. That is, society would be divided and would end up in civil war. Yeah. That's what you get when you...
He was roundly criticised as a racist,
he's been
pounded.
And he really wasn't. He was just he was a prophet, just right? And it's not. And he wasn't saying this is a good thing.
Yeah.
So my great concern for Australia and for the Western world is, if we let the barbarians in the gate, and barbarians always have to be led in by someone, and generally it's well-meaning Christians in our culture and clergy and so on. You let them in, what will happen is we will build a culture where women aren't free, girls aren't free, where you're not free to choose your own religion, where truth is no longer possible, and we become an Orwellian Islamist, dysfunctional, dystopian culture.
We have seen this. We have seen this. I mean, Lebanon's probably the big example. But even in European countries, what's been happening in France, England's going through not dissimilar issues at the moment, Ireland as well.
Well, a very simple example, like the best way to organize a society is liberal democratic capitalism, free markets, free trade, individual human rights, Judeo-Christian values, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the map and you look at, North Korea and South Korea, just look at a map at night and see who has the lights on. So, well, it's really simple. Like if we want to flourish, if your listeners want their grandkids to live in a world where their daughters don't have to wear hijabs to school, where they're free to say what they think, even if people disagree with them and even if it's offensive. If they want to live in a world where their grandkids can change religions, you want to be Jewish, but if you want to stop being Jewish and become Muslim, you're free to do that. If you want to stop being Muslim and become Christian, you're free to do that. No one's going to kill you. If you want to be gay, be gay. If you want to, that's fine.
Yeah.
We're not going to throw you off a building because of your sexual choices. If you want your grandkids to inherit that kind of world, now is the time to stand up.
Yeah.
Now is the time to get involved. The age of just thinking it's all going to be fine, she'll be right, mate, that's past.
Yeah. That's pretty confronting, Mark. What do you think about Australia was built on immigration, multicultural societies are a good thing, diversities are a good thing. What's the balance between allowing people to come in and building society and the dystopia that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, you and I are both migrants.
We are.
Australia is a migrant society. So let me ask you this. Oh gosh, this is so complicated. There's so much to say here, right?
Yes.
Where
is it the who? Is it the who and why they're coming?
It's you have to choose. You have to choose who you're going to let in, right? For my view, the successive waves of migrants to Australia have, by and large, shared or be willing to adopt our fundamental values and the way we understand the world works.
Yes.
So, post-Second World War, in the turn of the 18th to 19th centuries, Jewish migrants from Europe came, assimilated, fitted in.
Yeah.
Irish Catholics did the same. After the Second World War, the Greeks came, largely Christian, the Italians came, and then the Vietnamese and the Chinese. And I'd say to your listeners, which of those migrant groups firebombed the places of worship of other migrant groups that they didn't like?
Yeah.
The Serbs and the Croats coming from the Balkans, even during the Balkans War, didn't firebomb each other. They assaulted each other at football matches, and then we made them abandon, associating their football teams with ethnic identities, and they all get along, right?
Yeah.
There are limits to tolerance. There are limits to multiculturalism. I think when you import people into your culture who are theologically opposed to the very foundations of your whole society, that is foolish and problematic.
Yeah, and dangerous.
And we've done that. And people say to me, Mark, are you advocating a racist white Australia policy? And I say, no. We're a long way from that.
Totally.
But Australia has had a discriminatory immigration policy for many years. It wasn't on race. Do you know what it was on?
No.
During the Cold War, if you were a good Communist Party member sitting in Moscow and you thought, geez, it's a bit cold here, Sydney's pretty nice, why don't I move to Sydney? I can get a good tan, go to Bondi and build the Communist Party in Australia and eventually overthrow Australia and make it a communist utopia who can also go to the beach.
Yeah.
Would we have let those people in?
Yeah.
You could not immigrate to Australia if you were a card-carrying communist from behind the Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
No one thought that was a problem.
No.
So I would say we need to apply that same kind of confidence in our own civilization.
Yeah.
Say we do not want to bring people into Australia or allow them to flourish if their fundamental purpose in coming is to overthrow Western government and implement Sharia law and the Islamic Caliphate. I just go, why would we do that?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand that.
Look, it's the uncomfortable truth, I think, that the ideology, why would you invite people in who are fundamentally opposed to the way of life, values and structure of government? That's just madness. And also, I think Australia disproportionately has been bringing in people of that ilk.
Yeah, and that's not to say it's not advocating a racist immigration policy. I'm not going to go there. I'm not a politician, but I just think we need to think about this. It's like if you're running a business, say you're the CEO of Coca-Cola, and a third of your staff were selling Pepsi instead of Coca-Cola when they went out to the customers, would you be happy with that?
Probably not a good idea.
No, you'd be like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
We love you, but there are limits to diversity. And diversity is not necessarily, we're diverse. I'm diverse. I'm a walking bundle of
absolutely
diversity in some ways.
Yep.
But we need a certain common vision, or what I say, we need to believe in the better story of our civilization and our culture. Because as Jacinta Price famously said around the Voice debate, not all cultures are equal.
Yeah.
Now that's a terrible thing to say in our current day and age, and I'm glad she said it.
Yeah, indeed. I think there's aspects of culture that can be compared that can bring some clarity to that. I think but discernment around that is required, a bit of wisdom required in that. Can I just can we go back to the day where you've done this transition and created Never Again Is Now? Very brave with the Israeli flag. I'm not sure we'll be doing the same thing, but good on you for doing that. That day and the lack of response to it, the almost allowing of it, we don't want to cause division, therefore we're not going to be tough on it. Do you think that was a signal that's allowed the growth of the expression of anti-Semitism over the last year?
100%. I absolutely think that our authorities, the police and the governments, out of their desire not to appear racist or Islamophobic, have allowed the genie of unmitigated Jew hatred out of the bottle. And we are seeing that it is very hard to get that particular genie back in the bottle.
Totally.
And that's extraordinarily concerning.
Is it changing, like with the new hate laws and police seem to be a little bit more engaged than they were?
I think it's too soon to tell, to say, and I'm no expert in policing and justice systems, but we need to make, my view is politics is downstream of culture, right? So the politics that has allowed this policing and this fear of offense of anyone who's brown or anything but, this kind of, or is Islamic, this political option is allowed because culturally we've allowed it. So what we've got to do is make anti-Semitism, Jew hatred unthinkable in the general population. We've got to see its sources, whether it's Christian anti-Semitism, and God knows, man, the Christians, we've got like 1,800 years of persecuting the Jews. So own that, see it, stamp it out. The far right, there's fascist anti-Semitism, see it, stamp it out. There's hard left anti-Semitism and there's Islamic anti-Semitism. And wherever we see it, it should be unthinkable for the general population to allow it to flourish. I don't care where it comes from. And we just have to go, no, that's not Australian, and we will not tolerate it. So, for example, I'm not sure many of your listeners know this, but we tolerate the fact as a population that Jewish kids for decades have to go to school behind armed guards and security. Jews have to go to worship on a Friday night and a Saturday morning behind armed guards. At Central Synagogue, the Great Synagogue in Sydney, if you want to get into their office, you're going through like bomb-proof airlocks that are extraordinary. Like, why? It's not just October. Why in Australia have we tolerated that? Which is, the Jews are always going to be a little persecuted, Imagine if gay people wanted, if you could only get to a gay bar behind armed guards through security. Imagine if you were an Indigenous person and you could only go to an Indigenous community centre if you had armed guards and security screening and a bomb-proof glass.
Wouldn't be tolerated.
You'd go, that's insane. So we have to change that. We have to push back. We have to say that is un-Australian, and now's the time.
Yeah. Globally, things have shifted in the last period of time. The word bomb is Trump. That's not a swinging back a pendulum. I mean, the global order has just shifted. Do you think what's happened in the US and this mass, it's more of a U-turn or a switch. Things have fundamentally changed, and the world order seems to be going through a massive convulse of change as well. And obviously that will impact the Middle East as well as other areas and Australia. What do you see coming out of that as far as what you're doing? Do you think it's going to shift things or shift the dialogue?
Oh, I think it's massive. But I think it's just Trump has worked out that reality trumps ideology. So the Democrat view and the hard left's view is I can force the world to conform to what I want it to be. And Trump's gone, no, you can't. So let's go back to common sense reality. Let's have some borders, like everyone needs boundaries. Let's have borders. I think Trump sees that the problems of the Middle East are not the fault of the white colonial oppressor Jews, who are, by the way, mostly 52% of Jewish Israelis are from the Middle East, right? They're not white or European. That's another matter. So Trump's seen that, and he's seen that you can't. That the Arab world and the world in general responds to strength. It would be lovely if the way to establish world peace was to be nice to everyone, because that's actually that's a deeply Christian impulse. Like I treat everyone well, love them. Yeah. I hear this from my Christian friends. Well, we should all love. Jesus says, love your neighbor, turn the other cheek. We should just do that. Well, that's a recipe for interpersonal relationships. It's hard enough in a family. That's not how nation states work. Unfortunately, people respect strength, and Trump gets that.
Peace through strength.
It's peace through strength. So. I think it's too early to say where all this is going to end up.
Yeah.
But in my one of the things I've done over the years is done some corporate consulting and leadership training, and here's the truism I always say to everyone: if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah.
And so Trump has gone. We've been around this mulberry bush since 1947, or even earlier in the Middle East. And it's the same old pattern. The Arab world attacks the Israelis beat them. The rest of the world doesn't let Israel actually finish the job. Israel rebuild, the Arabs rebuild, give them a bit of time, then they attack again. And on, and cycle after cycle. And it's terribly violent. And the world seems happy to sacrifice Palestinian kids in that cycle of violence because no one's had the courage until Trump to stand up and go, no, there's a different way out of this. The Abraham Accords in his last time round, and now with his plan for Gaza, Mara Gaza, who knows what it'll be. But he's stepped out, which is what any good business leader would do. He stepped out, he's had a look around and go, this isn't working. There has to be a different way to solve this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll work.
Yeah.
But at one level, it doesn't matter because it's shifted the debate.
He's opened the thinking, hasn't he? Like the two-state solution's never going to work. Tried it. Well, it's just not going to work.
Everyone wants peace, but you need a partner for peace. And if the people on the other side of the table are saying, as Hamas and the Gazans are, we will kill you, and we will do October the 7th over and over again until such time as we've driven you out of the Middle East. You can't make peace with that.
No. So, that's true. So I think we live in a very interesting time and world, that is for sure. Mark, I really admire what you've done. You've created something out of nothing, out of passion and leadership. You've led in the corporate space, and you've taught leadership in the corporate arena. You're a church leader for a long time. That's a job I couldn't do. It has its own challenges for sure. I know some wonderful pastors and priests. And now you've gone and into a not-for-profit, social challenging social endeavor. What are your sort of key leadership lessons, things that have worked for you or lessons that you've learned along the way?
Oh, wow. So many. I think here's, oh gosh, where do I even start? Very simply, find a need and meet it.
Yes.
Like,
Absolutely.
just really simple. Find a need and meet it. So what I did was I saw a need. There's a need to protect the Jewish people, and there's a need to preserve and cause to prosper Western civilization in Australia.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I think I have some of what it takes to meet that need. Not all of it, but I can do a little bit, right? So I thought that was just really simple. And and if the need's there, find it and meet it, and then you'll discover there's a market for your services or goods, and you can then build an organization. The other thing I'd say is,
so that for me, that's the flag. That's a very clear sense of purpose, direction, reason for being, and people want that. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, they do. And you have to be in your business. If you're I'm running something that has a very clear social purpose. But if you're running a business, you have to understand what your purpose is and what is the primary task of your organization. And it's not to make money. Like, money is a necessary but not sufficient condition for the success of an organization. So same with what we're doing. Never Again is now, we need money, but we're not in it to make money. And I'd say if you're the really successful business people, they're not driven first and foremost by making money.
It's an outcome.
It's an outcome. And it's necessary. It's like oxygen. But so find that. I'd say the other thing is I've been spectacularly unsuccessful for 30 years in just, in a worldly sense, and you just plug away doing what is right. And now, for whatever reason, I've been thrust into this role that seems in some ways to be bringing more what some might call success in terms of public, I'm being noticed and blah, blah, blah. And it seems to be having a bit of an effect. But you just do what's right in front of you, and you're not responsible for the outcomes. I can't control the outcomes. I can only do what I believe is right for me to do here, and then the universe, God, nature, the world will take care of the outcomes. So that's very freeing.
So you hold those things loosely.
Yeah.
Nice, clear sense of purpose. What about you've managed to, in a very short period of time, galvanize a very broad number of people. How have you done that? I think the origin story, like standing up at personal cost with some bravery and incarnating the values and the story that you're telling matters. Now, I didn't do it for that purpose, but that when I think about why people are following me to the extent that they are, at least in part, it's because they go, there's a guy who actually at cost to himself has done what is right, and I trust that and respect that. And then to give up my secure tenured job of 30 years to do this and step out in faith, when there's no real upside in this for me. It's just endless hours, hatred, persecution, misunderstanding, economic insecurity, and losing a lot of friends. Apart from that, it's fine.
Apart from that, it's been great. But I think that's the kind of leadership people want, where you go, you're actually driven by a transcendent set of values, not your own personal peace and affluence. And they want that even for corporate leaders, So the best, like it's an Elon Musk, who will work 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day, and sleep under his desk and be on the factory floor and understand he's not in it for himself. Like he actually, you go, that's why the best and the brightest want to serve him. And the DEI appointments or the also-rans or the B grade folk don't. It's too hard. So I don't feel very special at all. I just go, there's something that needs to be done, and you get on and do it.
Awesome. Love that.
I don't know.
So we often talk here too about in leadership is challenging because you try and blend life and you've got family and a lot of other things going on in your world. So the live well piece, you're obviously taking a lot of flack, criticism from all different sort of quarters. You've got a family, wonderful family. How do you manage those things? Those competing priorities.
Yeah, I don't think I could have. I don't think I could be doing this if I were a younger man. I think it helps to be in your 50s and not to have a young family. I'm on the road a lot.
Yeah.
The pressure is enormous. And if I had little kids, I don't think I would have chosen. I wouldn't have chosen. I don't think I could have done this. But in this season of life, it's come at a time when I have the capacity to do it. I've still got energy and time.
And you married well.
And I married well. That's right.
Amazing.
And, there's the old adage, behind every successful man stands a surprised mother-in-law.
Yes.
So I think... I think here's the other thing. We have this myth of the heroic leader.
Yes.
Who's resilient. So I don't know, you read all this stuff about resilience and you've got to be this. You know what? Resilience and leadership is really, there's stuff in me that enables me to do it, but a lot of it's just the people you have around you. It's the support. I could never have done this. I mean, we've had this amazing friends of mine, Wayne and Michelle, who have co-founded this with me and have been, and all the volunteers. There's hundreds of people who've given hundreds of hours to make this work in extraordinary ways, and family. So it's really build a network of support around yourself. Abandon the myth of the heroic leader. Ask for help, which I'm terrible at.
It's so true.
Just admit So my prayer every day is, Lord, help me not stuff this up. I feel this acute sense that I could stuff it up at any time, and I might still, and it's just life. And then I think you just can't take yourself too seriously. That's the other thing. I think you just go, life's short. It's all going to be over. I'm a mess. You're a mess. We're all just doing our best.
That's right.
Give it a go. And the final piece I'd say is life prepares you for the calling that you have now. So
absolutely.
I don't actually care if people don't like me. At this stage in my life, I don't care. I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be rich. I just want to do what's right. I grew up in there's another podcast I was on. My friend is a psychologist, where I go into great depth about my family of origin and what growing up was like. And if anyone listens to that, you'll go, I've had to survive some pretty difficult stuff for the first 20 years of my life. So now I'm like, if you don't like me, that's sad, but bad luck. I'd rather you didn't kill me. I want to grow old. But, words, you can hate me all you like. I'm just going to I'm going to do what is right and true and good.
Good on you, Mark. And I know you well enough to know your heart, and you're just a great guy. You're doing the right thing, which is awesome. Look, I'm sure a lot of the things that we've talked about today have resonated with people. If they want to get involved, if they want to understand more about what's going on, how do they do that?
Well, I would just say, join the movement. We want to build an army of love.
Nice, I love it.
We want to.
Said with syrup.
Yes, army of love. Barry White is going to do that. No, we want to. So come to join our website, neveragainisnow.com.au. Reach out to me. If you want me to come and speak in your business, if you want me to come and talk to your board, if you want to engage with what we're doing, use your cultural capital and your literal capital to push back the hatred by renewing Western civilization, by standing with the Jewish community. Come and be part of it. Give your God, the universe, has you where you are for such a time as this to make a difference with your life, because it's going to be over soon. So get involved.
Pivotal time, absolutely critical, pivotal time. That's a good place to finish, Mark. We'll make sure those links are available to people down below the line, so people can reach out and connect with you and the organisation as they see fit. Mark, I've really enjoyed today. It's been so good to see you, and congratulations on what you've started, and all great success, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been just a great privilege, and I hope there's something of use to your listeners in all of this.
I'm sure there is, Mark. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us at the Lead Well, Live Well vodcast. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to know more about what we're all about, you can find us at leadwelllivewell.com.au.